Hello, welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Happy Friday to all of you who are joining us here from across Canada and the many reaches beyond. We're so happy that you're here with us today. My name is Jill Clark. I manage media relations and communications at the Rideau Hall Foundation, and I will be your host and moderator for today's event. I'm proudly joining you from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Territory, the land of people who have stewarded and protected this place since time immemorial and who today are demonstrating both traditional and contemporary excellence. The Rideau Hall Foundation strives to walk humbly in relationship with the people whose land we occupy and to learn from the expertise and wisdom of Métis, First Nations, and Inuit people across Turtle Island. Today, we will be joined by RHF Chair, the Right Honorable David Johnston, and RHF President and CEO, Teresa Marquez, as well as the directors of some of our programs and initiatives. We encourage and invite you to please say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from. And please leave questions and comments if you have them for any of our speakers today. These events always seem to yield a most fascinating Q&A session, and I'm sure today will be no different. So please speak to us in the comments, let us know that you're here, and feel free to send us some questions. Now, without any further ado, I am very pleased to welcome RHF President and CEO Teresa Marquez and RHF Chair, the Right Honorable David Johnston. David, Teresa, welcome.
Hi, Jill.
Hi. David, would you like to extend a welcome to our guests here today?
Well, we're so delighted to have you all with us today on this lovely Friday in Ottawa, and I hope that's the case across the country. And we'll be looking a bit at the past of the Rideau Hall Foundation and some of the great opportunities and challenges in the future. So great to be with you all. Thanks for joining on.
Wonderful. So I would love to dive right into our Q&A session. David, the first question is for you, and I'm going to start us off with a bit of a Dickensian question, as Christmas is around the corner, sort of about the RHF of past, present, and future. So if you would, please reflect for us on, how the RHF came to be, the year that was, and how that sets us up for the year to come.
Well, it's a bit like a Christmas carol, I think, Jill, because it has a wonderful outcome. I suppose the starting point was 2010 when in my installation speech as Gigi, I spoke about a smart and caring nation, a call to service. And we began developing some of our outreach priorities around that. By 2012, Stephen Wallace, who was the secretary who ran the Office of the Governor General, and I decided that we really needed a non-traditional kind of enterprise to amplify the powers and the reach of the Governor General, to honor and to challenge and to collaborate with Canadians to build a smarter and more caring nation. And the idea of a foundation came out of the Philanthropy and Volunteer Advisory Committee that we had appointed. And the idea was to have an independent body that would be reinforcing those fundamental values and virtues that makes Canada a very special place in and around the notion of smart and caring, and both adjectives are important, to provide a kind of entrepreneurial approach to a collaboration with Canadians and institutions across the country. And thus the foundation was born. We started in a very humble way. We had essentially no money to speak of. The three-person executive team was donated to us by Community Foundations of Canada. They lent their three senior people to help us on a part-time basis. And it wasn't until 2016, just the year before I finished my time as Governor General, that we began to be able to raise some monies to support our activities and begin our programs in earnest. And it was at that point that Don and Ruth Taylor, who are with us on the call today, stepped in, and through Don's foundation, provided us with really remarkable investment at that time in a very fledgling foundation finding its way, and have done so in support to the present day. And that really permitted us to lift off, as we say. When I look at where we are today, just about to enter into our 10th year, we're beyond where our wildest dreams would have taken us in terms of the connections, the strengthening, the reinforcement of basic Canadian values, and you'll hear a lot about that in the minutes to come. So I won't anticipate that substance, but simply to say that, I've always believed this was a good country, and one of the wonderful privileges that Sharon and I had at Rideau Hall was to see this country through a different lens, and it's even much better than I thought it was. And so the work of the foundation has been to build on that good country and make it better, facing up to where we've fallen short, but improving upon those areas where we're already good. And this is a very appropriate time for us to be looking into the next decade of the Rideau Hall Foundation, because we're at a bit of a hinge point in history. Some things going well, a lot of things very challenging, especially as we come out of the pandemic. And I think what we are finding is that these challenges, climate change, pandemic, global financial crisis of 2008, globalization, digitalization, conflict we see increasing around the world, that the elements of trust and caring about one another and doing so in a smart, innovative fashion are really important. And I'm such a believer in Canada. I think we should be the Athens to the new Rome's, the people that believe in knowledge and developing our talent to the fullest, and then using that talent to improve the condition not only of Canadians, but people around the world. So pretty ambitious, but good things to come in the next few years, and you're going to hear more about them now.
Great. And no sight of an Ebenezer Scrooge around the RHF, I don't think.
That was the ghost of Christmas past.
That's right. Great. Well, thank you so much. And Teresa, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And we're really excited to hear a lot about what the RHF is doing, because, the RHF has managed not only to meet the very unique challenges of the past 2 years, but in many cases exceed them. So where would you say that our strengths lie, and how are we leveraging those strengths to meet and exceed these goals?
Thanks, Jill. I mean, you're right. It has been a very challenging year and period of time for us all, but I feel really heartened by kind of where we are as an organization and what the future holds. I think in many respects it comes down to the vision, and it's a real privilege and kind of honor, I think, to be able to carry David's vision into the future and to make it permanent for Canada, really to build a smarter and more caring country. When I think about sort of the successes that we've had and the impact we've been able to achieve over the past little while and stepping into the future, I think it comes down to kind of two key elements at the core. One, we have a very strong governance structure in place. I've come to just appreciate having a strong governance and strong board so deeply. It's such a gift and such a strength that allows us to really be nimble and to be agile and to respond to challenges that are facing the country, to be able to look at the country and issues that are facing us very broadly, but bring partners together and work to address those issues on a very local, tangible, kind of on the ground level. So the ability to kind of have that national perspective, but operate on the ground in a way that has impact has been key. And I think where we're seeing our greatest impact across all the portfolios, so related to learning equity in the country, our culture of innovation, giving and volunteerism, and leadership development, is really where we're able to bring together partners from across different sectors. That, I think, is where the magic happens, when we can look at an issue, whether it's learning equity, as we'll talk a little bit about later on, and bring together sort of the right partners in government, across provinces, in private sector, in education, and in the third sector, to design solutions and to bring the right resources to the table. So it really is that kind of magic of working in partnership across all sectors across the country that I think has been key to the work that we do.
The magic of working in partnership. I really like that. Thank you. So we'd love to talk a little bit about the RHF's pillars, and most notably our learning pillar, which, if you'll forgive the horrible pun, we have really seen launch over the last year. So Teresa, how has investing in learning really making an impact?
Yeah, so I think many Canadians at home, and I think folks around the world would agree that learning outcomes are strong in Canada. That I think we're well known for having strong educational systems, but I also think that there's a lot more that we can do. And at the Rideau Hall Foundation, our focus is really on ensuring that equity of opportunity as well as excellence. And if you think about sort of how Canada is known at home and abroad, we really want to ensure that we're defining our learning culture with those two kind of core values around equity and excellence. So over the past year and a bit more, we've taken steps to build a program that, again, is national in scope, but helps to address those challenges on the ground, to identify areas where, again, we could be doing more and where we could be bringing more partners together. So I'd actually like to ask one of our colleagues, Ikam Opara, to come onto the call. Ikam is our National Director of Learning Partnerships, to talk in a little more detail about the Catapult Canada program.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Teresa. I think I'm going to keep building on that pun that Jill put out there about launching, and talk about Catapult, like Teresa just mentioned. We had a lot of fun as we were thinking about how this project will be. Well, we'll talk about it. And what really was engaging for us was how we worked with our partners, like has been mentioned, to just make sure that any barriers that prevent young people or learners anywhere in the country really from being able to move from a point of not knowing a thing to knowing a thing, being able to accumulate the skills that they need to be able to build the kind of career paths and just have a place of comfort in the learning journey, and also in the outcome of being better educated and better informed about the world around them. One example that I'd want to share from our Catapult Canada program is a grant that we've made through our Access and Innovation Fund to one of our partners at the Boys and Girls Club of Moncton. And this is an example of an initiative that is looking at the underlying barriers and issues that might prevent a young person in school from being able to attain and graduate and to attain the grades and skills that they're looking to do so and graduate. This project is a 3-year partnership with them to build on the numeracy, literacy, and social emotional skills of over 300 young people in the Moncton area, specifically youth from grades 7 to 12. And one interesting thing about the approach that they're taking is working directly with the schools that these young people are in to plot a clear yet flexible path, a learning path for those young people, to re-engage them back into the learning process, taking into account what their particular interests are, what their motivations are to learn, to make sure that the wraparound supports and services that they need around them to be able to attain whatever level of learning and really to get past those barriers that we know exist in front of them. Many of these young people are young people who are, classified, NEET, not in education, employment, or training. And a really interesting thing that we love about this partnership is that they're really working hard at the Boys and Girls Club of Moncton to ensure that those barriers of proximity or not knowing what kind of education you need to achieve what level of employment or to be trained in a particular skill are knocked out of the way for these young people. So there's, resume building, interviewing skills that is a part of the project delivery in itself. And a key component of Catapult, which we're building into all of the grants and partnerships that we're making, is a real focus on measurement and evaluation, particularly taking on the burden and the costs of evaluating the outcomes and the learning from these grants and initiatives. We know it's really important to be able to tell the story of what has happened in the project and being intentional in saying what has happened as opposed to just what works. In the Catapult program, we're being very intentional to know that not everything is going to work. We need to know how to fail forward and learn from that, and be able to reinvest that knowledge and the learning that has been gathered by doing something back into the community so others can learn from it as well. That is essentially what the way Catapult is built to support the learning pillar at the Rita Hall Foundation.
Thanks, Ikam. It is definitely a really, really exciting time for us with the Catapult Canada program. And Catapult joins another project in our learning portfolio, which has been in operation for, again, almost 10 years. And that's the Queen Elizabeth Scholars Program. So when you think about sort of learning equity as well as excellence of learning opportunities, it's another project that we've been able to kind of bring partners together on across all sectors. And really support close to 3,000 scholars in developing greater perspectives, global perspective, and really widening their sort of empathy around what's happening in the world around them. So it might be a good time to look at our kind of culture of innovation, and maybe we could pull Jill and Amy to the screen.
Yeah. Thanks, Teresa. The RHF does and has done a lot of work to really shine a spotlight on Canada's culture of innovation. And David, it's a subject that I know is very near and dear to your heart. So could you tell us what role the RHF plays in the Canadian innovation landscape, and mostly why it matters?
Sure. I'll give the 30,000 feet above the earth view, and Amy will give it on the ground up from there. That's the smart part of the smart and caring nation, to be smart, especially with the objective of improving the human condition. And being innovative, it's a very simple word, but it's very difficult to do. Innovate just means doing things better. And underlying that is a culture, and it's a habit of mind. It begins with curiosity, and then intention, and then the tenacity to do things. Innovation, I think, should be a verb which says roll up your sleeves. And so what we've been trying to do in the innovation program is to reinforce and to accentuate the culture of innovation in Canada, just doing things better, working smarter. And it's not simply technological innovation, although that's important. It's business innovation and it's social innovation. Some of the most interesting innovation awards in the Governor General Innovation Awards have been social innovations. And so through the foundation, we raised $5 million to create the Governor General's Innovation Awards to put a spotlight on innovation across the country, and then developed a series of programs, and Amy will describe them to you, which I think are just fantastic because we've really put legs on the idea of making Canada more innovative, especially focusing on the youth. Tom Jenkins, who was the instigator of this and helped to raise the initial money, and I wrote 2 books on innovation. One was Indigenous, which was collecting stories of innovation of our Canadian history and before, and we were absolutely thunderstruck and delighted about the pre-colonial stories of innovation that we could collect in this. That book was intended to be just 150 stories, and it turned out to be about 300, and the publisher says that's all you can contain in that book, so we then developed a website. Then we developed a children's edition of it, much smaller and with lots of pictures. And those books now are in virtually every high school in the case of the adult edition, and in the case of the children's edition, virtually every primary school in the country. And through careful integration with the Faculty of Education at Nipissing University and Wilfrid Laurier University, we've been able to develop over 1,000 lesson plans for teachers who can take these stories and put legs on them. Amy will tell you more about what happened beyond that, but I'll just end with a story. Tom and I were in a primary school shortly after the books were distributed, and we were watching the teacher in a grade 3 class. So these would be 9 and 10-year-olds taking the lesson plan for the day, and she had chosen Alexander Graham Bell's telephone. This was near Brantford, where it was invented, this particular school. And she'd given assignments to the kids in groups of 3. And one project was to presume that you were a business owner and you had the franchise to sell and install telephones in homes 1870s and 1880s. These 9 and 10-year-olds crafted the advertisement and the sales literature for this particular phone. And then the other group had the job of writing the owner's manual. Now you bought the phone, what does it do and how do you make it work? And I'll tell you, when those little ones finished, I wanted to buy one of those phones from 1880 with the receiver on the wall, hello operator. And I wanted to have one of them, that same group, take my computer and develop a manual of how to make this thing work so I wouldn't have to rely on my 16 or 17-year-old grandchildren anymore. It was absolutely outstanding to see this story, this history put into practice with action. And there's been so much of that in the innovation. I'll end there, and Amy will tell you more about how we put legs on the innovation program.
Thank you, David. As David mentioned, we've been working on the innovation portfolio at the Rideau Hall Foundation for a few years now with a number of different initiatives. It started out with the Ingenious books and Innovation Nation, as well as the creation of the Governor General Innovation Awards. followed by Canadian Innovation Week. And one of the things that we learned in doing those initiatives, working with partners for the past 4 years, is that there are supports out there through post-secondary institutions and other organizations for incubating innovators at the sort of the 20 and up level. And there isn't really a lot out there with a broad definition of innovation to support teenagers who are innovating. And we know they are innovating across the country. There's some amazing stories out there. And so we got together with one of our partners who we've been working with for a few years now, Junior Achievement Canada, and their extensive network of program delivery across schools and after-school programming to teach both financial literacy and entrepreneurship and innovation. And we said, what can we do for these young innovators to support them and give them access to cash and mentorship through our network? And that's how we came up with the idea for Indigenous Plus, and that carries on the name of the books that David and Tom Jenkins published a few years ago. So we're going to target 14 to 18-year-olds. As I mentioned, we're going to use a very broad definition of innovation. So teenagers who are innovating to perhaps solve a complex challenge within their community, or in the science field, or a social enterprise. And we're going to provide regional cash prizes as well as national cash prizes, along with key mentorship supports and training webinars on things like intellectual property, overcoming risk, taking that step, taking the risk on yourself and going for it. And so the program launched in October with the help of an organization called Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, as well as help from our Governor General Innovation Award laureates and Arctic Inspiration Prize laureates. We delivered 9 seminars, webinars to about 1,500 students and teachers in almost all regions of the country to deliver a talk on what it means to what a journey about to become an innovator is like, and how some of the innovators that have been recognized and celebrated nationally through our awards programs, how they got started and how they found success and what motivated them with their innovations. And one innovator in particular was one of the first winners of the Governor General Innovation Award program. Back in 2016, Dr. Brianne Everett, she may be joining us today. Brianne created a product that is a diabetic insole for shoes that detects and allows for preventative medicine in areas of the foot where there's particular sensitivities for those with diabetes. Brianne did that under the age of 30 and has gone on to create her second company most recently and is developing a whole new product line. And Brianne did a fantastic job of sharing her story of innovation with high school students across the country, and even took them for a tour of her production facility, which was just fantastic to see. So applications are going to open for this program this month and close in February, and then we will begin the selection process for the regional and national award winners. Our national award winners will be celebrated during Innovation Week in May 2022. And the goal is to reach as many students across the country as possible over the next 3 years. Even those who might have an idea but aren't quite sure what to do with it, we want to ignite that spark, ignite that flame with them, and hopefully we'll see even more and more innovators across this country in the next few years. Over to you, Jill.
Thanks, Amy. That's great. And yes, we had such a great time using this platform that we're on right now, using StreamYard for the Ingenious Plus launch. And it was just such a huge success. It'll be, I think, one of our big highlights of the year for sure. So I'd actually like to bring on one of our newest board members. The RHF has an incredible board, truly made up of, I believe, some of our greatest Canadians, including Abdullah Snowbar, who's here with us today. Abdullah is the executive director of the DMZ, CEO of DMZ Ventures and Zone Startups, and he is helping us to continue the conversation about Rideau Hall Foundation's commitment to youth and engaging young people in innovation. So thank you, Abdullah, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Jill, for having me. Really looking forward to this.
Like a new board member initiation ritual that we're doing to put you on the spot.
Exactly. The hard part is always following David, right? But this is, I'm delighted to be here.
I'm sure you're up to the task. Absolutely. So as a foundation, we're embarking on a larger presence in a lot of diverse youth spaces across, a lot of our pillars and initiatives. So what would you say is important for us to know and to keep in mind when it comes to youth and creating environments in which they can really thrive?
Great question. And thanks, Jill. I think to start off, I need to, first of all, commend the Rideau Hall Foundation's youth initiative so far, from what we just heard about with Indigenous to the Catapult. The programs that have been led by the foundation have been tremendously successful in empowering youth from coast to coast to coast, and making them think about how they can take the driver's seat in creating a better and more innovative tomorrow and Canada, effectively. When it comes to supporting youth and creating environments for them to thrive in, I think there's a few key things to keep in mind, and I'll talk about 3 in particular. I think the first one is to provide a greater opportunity for autonomy. And what I mean by that is youth need to be empowered to think for themselves and come to their own conclusions. The next generation needs to be able to learn from our generation's mistakes and assess for themselves what blind spots we have and how they can change for the better. And to David's point, it's doing things better than they are currently today. The second thing I would say is decision-making and responsibility. So youth who are supported to participate in decision-making and responsibility are not only more likely to have increased confidence and self-belief, but they're set up to be more involved in the future. And initiatives that look to engage youth should be designed to help them learn how to make their own decisions, not necessarily limit them. And finally, I will say is, the last thing I want to talk about was inclusion. Programs that are catered towards youth need to ensure that no one is getting left behind. And I appreciated Amy's last comments about encouraging people from all walks of life to, apply for programs that they feel will be fitting, no matter what the idea is or how early the idea is. Just think about it. Having different and diverse youth working side by side is crucial to bring different perspectives into the conversation. And it also enables the development of new ways of thinking, strong relationships, mutual respect, and trust, and understanding and an understanding that will carry them on to the next journey in their lives. It's important to remember that youth access to programs like the ones that Rideau Hall Foundation is currently doing vary. So one's socioeconomic status, previous education, and upbringing plays a very big role in determining what sort of extracurricular activities they're going to be seeking, and general career paths they're going to be looking into. So it's important that we, as program leaders and Rideau Hall Foundation, don't look to only attract the usual suspects, and we have to ask ourselves, how can we break down barriers for those who have additional obstacles? So engaging youth from different economic backgrounds, religions, ethnicities, sexual orientations is more than a box to be checked, and it should be the foundational approach in how we kind of build towards these programs in our country's effort to become great. So if we want to see meaningful change for future generations, we must start with being intentional about youth engagement, and providing them with the opportunities that will allow them to be the creators and the builders of a country that celebrates diverse perspectives and excellence. And that's, I think, what kind of brings it all together, and really kind of speaks to the center and to the importance of smart and a caring nation that David alluded to quite a few times today already.
Thank you, Abdullah. We certainly are so fortunate to have you. And I'm going to ask David to respond. I know you said it's tough to follow him, but I think, sir, this is also a pretty tough act to follow, what Abdullah just shared with us.
You got that right, Jill. So let me just add a postscript or two. Abdullah, great to hear you speak. And we marvel at what you're doing at DMZ at Ryerson, not just for Toronto and environments, but for the whole country and the whole world. Just to pick up on the third theme, the importance of inclusivity, the diversity, inclusivity, very much a trademark of this country that we have welcomed peoples, and the beginning with the Indigenous people who were here when the European settlers arrived, welcoming them. And each new group of immigrants, each new wave has brought new energy and a determination that life shall be better for their children than it is for them. A great sense of the future and doing things better has come from that sense of new start, very often coming from great hardship and doing things better. And we've benefited so much, I think, from the influx of new ideas and creativity that comes. I often quote a major study that Deloitte did of several thousand companies just to drive diversity and inclusivity into an enterprise being successful. And they found that those companies that could move from diversity, which is just a noun stating existing facts, what percentage of women, what percentage of men do you have on your board, and what do you have with respect to other groupings in your staffing and so on. That's just a statement of facts. You have to move from diversity to inclusivity. And the inclusivity is where you have those diverse people together, acting together to do something better and taking advantage of all of their ideas. The analogy that I often use and comes out of the Deloitte work is that it's one thing to invite someone to the dance and say, we've got a diverse population here. It's another thing to invite them onto the dance floor, that is to invite them to dance. And that's part of the inclusivity bit. So if you can go beyond the invitation to the dance, what number of people do you have and so on, and get them out on the dance floor, dancing or doing things together, then you get the real rewards. And the rewards of a very practical kind for enterprises that those companies, and it was about 20% of the total, who succeeded in moving from diversity to inclusivity. One, were more profitable substantially. Number two, were more successful in both recruitment and training of their people. And my gosh, the human resource or the people challenge is a huge one in enterprise today. Better at recruiting and better at keeping their people there without the churn. And the third thing is those enterprises were more innovative, and it stands to reason because they were taking advantage of not only a broader pool of talent, but of more creativity, thinking of things somewhat differently, looking at it from a second lens. And I often say to my business colleagues, as we're going through something really difficult like the pandemic or like the 2008 financial crisis, what you need on your board and what you need in your senior management team are the people who can think somewhat independently. You don't just circle the wagons when you're in that kind of difficult challenge. You have to think to be not only resilient, but be creative, to find the solutions forward. And of course, leadership in those situations is instilling hope that we can do better, and let's get on with it.
Thank you so much, both David and Abdullah. Just really, really incredible thoughts to lead us into a very purposeful and intentional occupation of these youth spaces. And, speaking of innovation, as David said, just the act of doing something better, we have a new initiative to encourage and support more Indigenous young people to enter the teaching profession. So, Teresa, I would love it if you could tell us more about that.
Sure, Jill, I'm happy to. I think, over the past couple of years in particular, I think there's been a much broader kind of recognition of the history of trauma that's been inflicted on Indigenous peoples in Canada. And like many organizations in the philanthropic and charitable space, we at the Rita Hall Foundation are asking ourselves how we can meaningfully play a role in the work towards reconciliation. And in thinking about that and thinking about what role we can play and what we can do, we're looking to the wisdom of Justice Murray Sinclair, former senator and chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and his words that education is what got us into this mess and education is what will get us out of it. So in the year ahead, we're going to be investing time, energy, and resources to working with partners across all sectors to really dramatically increase the numbers of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis teachers graduating and moving successfully into the teaching profession. We're going to be building an approach that is grounded in humility and then importantly is very forward-looking and practical. But we're also recognizing that this is a very complex issue and a challenge that's going to require a lot of work from a lot of different people and organizations. So maybe I'll ask my colleague, Bill Mintram, who's the Rideau Hall Foundation's Director of Indigenous and Northern Relations, to talk a bit more about the journey that we've been on and the work that we're hoping to do.
Hello, everyone. And today I'm excited to be able to share a little bit about the work that we're doing with Indigenous teacher education. And in specific, this work is the first step that we took was to partner with Inspire. And in that partnership, we are supporting an initiative called Teach for Tomorrow. And that it started in Winnipeg with a partnership between the Winnipeg School Division and the University of Winnipeg, where they recruited young people in grade 11. And they would then, grade 10, they'd move into grade 11 and complete high school with an educational assistant diploma, enter direct entry into the Faculty of Education for a 5-year dual degree program. Now, this was an innovative approach. It was something new with many organizations and institutions across the country really having eyes on it. And we were able to partner with Inspire to support their ability to enter into a second a pilot for this initiative, which will be located in Northern Ontario. And so over and above this significant partnership, we've also taken time over this year to really learn and listen. And we've met with Indigenous teacher education initiatives from coast to coast to coast to really learn about what they're doing, where they envision themselves in the future, opportunities that they see, and opportunities where we may be able to bring value in supporting them and being an ally within that space. And so with that, we're really excited about this journey ahead. And as Teresa had just mentioned, that there is so much that we're looking forward to in the coming year as we really position ourselves with humility to be able to work and bring value in this space, but doing so in a significant way. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, so much. That's wonderful. David, I'd love to bring you on for some thoughts if you have them.
Well, I love it, Jill. I wanted to intervene again with a 30,000-foot observation. I'm really excited about this Indigenous Teachers Program. It's Indigenous young people that Bill is referring to who are selected as early as grade 11 and given them an opportunity to enter the noble profession of teaching. In my installation address, which I mentioned as Smart and Caring Nation, I said, if you remember only 3 words of what I say today, they are cherish our teachers. Cherish our teachers, because apart from our family, mom and dad and the family, teachers are the people that have the greatest opportunity for influence on us. And I said in the Senate chambers where my installation ceremony took place, if we had 2 or 3 hours together, I'd tell you 100 stories of different teachers, mentors, coaches, counselors that have helped me along the way. And if I have had any success in life, it's due to that. It's those teachers. So for me, this is a very favorite program. I'm sure you're not supposed to have any favorite program in all of the programs of Rideau Hall Foundation, but it's a little like our 5th daughter. We have 5 daughters, and our last one, Sam, was the youngest, and she was always struggling to keep up with her sisters. And when they had the 5 of them together, she'd say, "Daddy, you love me most of all, don't you, dear? Don't you, Dad?" And I said, "Yes, dear, I do. Present company accepted." So I love the teacher program, of course, present company accepted. And, the dream here is over the next 10, 12 years to identify 10,000 young Indigenous people who are interested in the teaching career, identify them as early as high school, and provide them with opportunities, summer camp counseling and so on, stages, mentorships, assisting, etc., and then provide them with scholarship help and more mentoring and counseling through a B.Ed program at a local university. And out of that, develop a cadre of young Indigenous teachers who really believe in education as the new buffalo, the new opportunity, and are proud of being Indigenous teachers with their own history and culture and language, etc., as well as these great opportunities in Canada. And I think that we can deal with the education gap between non-Indigenous and Indigenous children, which is very large at the present time, and eliminate it by focusing on that capacity issue, that supply of inspiring, enlightening teachers to reinforce the hope that exists in young Indigenous people across this country. And I really see this hope. I see these young people looking forward to a brighter future, but are looking for the skills and the attitudes and the support that permits them to play more than a full role. At the present time, the number of teachers who are Indigenous would be about 1/3 of what you would expect from their representation in the population of Canada, 4 to 5%. We should equal that and expand beyond that and see this particular program as really making a difference in one of the big challenges in our country, and that's reconciliation with our Indigenous people.
Thank you so much, David. That was wonderful. It's our pleasure now to move on to our audience Q&A. So I say this to David every time, I've really played softball, given you some of the easy questions, and now it's time for our audience to really cross-examine you. So please feel free to put your questions into the chat, into the comment section, and we'll be able to get those to David, also to Teresa and any other directors that you've heard from today. So we do have a question to start off with. This is a question from Vince Mirabelli, who asks, what do you see, and David and Teresa, either of you can take a stab at answering this, what do you see as the most important work or project that the Rideau Hall Foundation will be undertaking in 2022? Teresa, why don't we start? Or David, Teresa, whomever would like to go first.
Well, I think as David said, it's like picking one of your kids. How do you pick one that you love the best? But thanks for the question, Vince. I think overall, I'm just really excited about the work that we're doing across the board to encourage more opportunities for youth to engage meaningfully in their communities and in their passions and in the challenges that they want to be part of solving and in addressing. So whether it's removing barriers for young people to volunteer and get engaged in their communities, to encouraging that sort of spark of innovation through programs like Indigenous, or working with Indigenous young people and helping them to kind of see the pathway and work towards education careers in the teaching profession. Youth and the ability to kind of encourage young people to get involved and to remove barriers for young people to engage is sort of the cross-cutting theme of our work ahead in 2022. And I'm very excited for that. But David, maybe you have another sort of favorite child to pick from.
Well, I do, Teresa, but this is directed to Vince and Vince alone. Vince has become a dear friend, and Vince is a remarkable community leader and business leader in Thunder Bay, the other end of the lake where I grew up. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, and I tell Vince that the good waters begin at the west end of Lake Superior and flow down to influence and improve us in Sault Ste. Marie. Vince, my favorite will be the one that I'll be watching. If you and I can do it together as a favorite, is the Indigenous Teachers Program that we hope to develop at Lakehead University, which is a very appropriate university to be doing precisely this kind of thing, because you've already done some really important initiatives. So I'll be watching that, and watching it because this program will be successful if we are successful in not having it a national program designed and built in Ottawa and then spread across the country in a kind of cookie cutter way. That's top down. It'll be successful if it's bottom up. If it's local leaders like you, Vince, in Thunder Bay, that says our splendid faculty of education at Lakehead University already has a good program in Indigenous studies. But to be one of the early partners with us and with Inspire and others, to have this cadre of young Indigenous people identified as early as high school and then following them all the way through and ensuring their success by the mentoring, counseling, et cetera, that can come. I should also say Vince has been a great supporter of a favorite institution of mine at Lakehead University, which is the Boralaskan Law School. Boralaskan grew up in Thunder Bay. His brother Saul was mayor. He was a very distinguished justice of the Supreme Court of Canada and a wonderful mentor of mine when He was a professor at the University of Toronto Law School, and I became a young law professor there. So there's my choice, Vince. And the lesson I draw from it is the importance of us developing this program with Indigenous people, nothing about us without us, driven by them, serving their needs, and with the local community being very supportive through its Faculty of Education.
Thank you, David. That was so lovely. Now, we'd love to be able to hear, I know that we may have from the Barrett Family Foundation, Bob, who may be watching. Bob, I'd love to just ask you to check your email for a special link so that we can pipe you in for a question session. But in the meantime, David, I'll come back to you for just a moment. I know that the pandemic is no exception for you in terms of being very busy at work. You have not at all rested on your laurels or languished like some others have. So I know that you've got another book in the works and would love if you could give us a little preview as to how that's taking shape.
Well, this one is a sequel to the book Trust. So the first book we wrote when I was GG was The Idea of Canada, The Letters to a Nation. And then the second was the two that Tom and I did on Indigenous as a collection of stories for adult readers, and then the children's book on innovation. And then we did a book on trust, came out about 2 years ago. And what really motivated the trust book was my real concern about the diminishing trust in public institutions in our own country, but in so many other jurisdictions around the world. A simple question. What percentage of the world's population do you believe lives in a country with a fully functioning democracy? Would it be 40%, 20%, 10%? The Economist Intelligence Unit tells us it's 8.3%. And those countries whose citizens live in a fully functioning democracy do not include the citizens of the United Kingdom of France or the United States, and in many places the countries which were the birthplace of modern democracy. The first five in this order are Iceland, Norway, Sweden, New Zealand, and Canada, all relatively small countries. Sweden is 10. Canada's 38 million, so we're in the middle size. But we occupy that position of our citizens, or citizens around the world, believe that we're a fully functioning democracy. But even in Canada, that is in peril. That is in some jeopardies as we take it for granted so much. And so this book was intended initially to try to analyze where we were in trust in our public institutions, governments, non-governmental organizations, the media, and business, and to follow that. Edelman Trust has been tracing this for 20 years or so, and we have a partnership with Edelman Trust in helping us figure out where we go in innovation. So that book is about building trust. But as we reflected on, trust at the national, international level, we say, where does it come from? Well, it comes from trusted communities and regions and so on. So where does that come from? It comes from individuals. So the arc of the book begins with the trustworthy person. How do we make of ourselves trustworthy people? And then secondly, how do we make of our neighborhoods, our families, our enterprises, our regional endeavors, trustworthy institutions and trust in one another? And then how do we do it at a national scale? Trust comes in on foot and goes out in horseback, or as my friend Mark Carney, our director Mark Carney says, Jill's got the symbol there. Trust comes in on foot and goes out in a Ferrari. And just think of that kind of symbol, that symbolism. And, trust has a thin veneer of civility and civilization. We have to work at it all the time. And so much of our initiatives within the Rideau Hall Foundation are building trust. We come to empathy, and I think empathy is the other side of the coin. Trust on one side and empathy on the other. And hope is what holds them up. Empathy is not sympathy, which means I'm sorry for your situation. That's really too bad. Empathy is I understand your difficult situation, and I'm going to come and walk on your shoes, and we're going to do something about it. Just to come back to trust and empathy, finally, Jill, George Shultz is the remarkable senior statesperson in the United States, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of State. Also distinguished in academia, he was the dean of that wonderful business school at the University of Chicago. And in business, he was the CEO of Bechtel, the great US-based international corporation. And he said at one time, and it's in his obituary, he died at 99 just about 6 months ago, he said, trust is the coin of the realm. When you have trust in the room, whether it's the family room, the military room, the board of directors room, the training room, everything goes well. And things don't go well. Everything else is detail. For me, trust and empathy together are a very important set of values, which I think are really important in Canada. And as we come through this climate change, and more in particular the pandemic, I think we've seen how those two values, trust and empathy, are so linked and so important.
Thank you, sir. I'll never see a Ferrari the same way again. Anytime I see it now, it's the trust Ferrari for sure. So along with David, Teresa, I know that you have also not been languishing or resting on your laurels over the pandemic, and we've seen a lot of really great changes and developments and growth at the Rideau Hall Foundation. And one that I particularly like is sort of a new tagline that we've been using to inform the way we approach our work, the way that we approach our kind of partners and stakeholders and program participants. And that tagline is igniting our shared potential. Do you want to speak to a little bit of what that means to you and what it can mean to the RHF kind of writ large?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. I mean, it's definitely been kind of a driver that's informed our work and our partnerships. And I think when we're considering sort of the notion of our shared potential, we're thinking about how to set the table for people to contribute to their own fullest potential. So really kind of igniting individual potential, but more than that, the potential that we have when we work together. So really the potential of all Canadians and the potential for Canada really on the world stage. And in many ways, it kind of goes back to trust. And this is the core importance of that as kind of the glue that can make so much happen and can really inspire so much potential and so much goodness. And we see it, we rely on it throughout all of our partnerships at the Rideau Hall Foundation. Everything that we do is in partnership, and nothing looks exactly like anything else. And that's part of the fun. We've talked about, a number of our projects and priorities underway, but that was only really kind of scratching the surface, because I know that there are folks who are on this call from our other partnerships, including the Michener Awards Foundation, with whom we work very closely, and with the Arctic Inspiration Prize, another program that is really dear to our heart, and setting the conditions and awarding Northern innovation and excellence and expertise by working with the Northern Trust. And it really all comes down to having very trusted relationships with these partners. And when you have that in place, good things can happen.
Thanks so much, Teresa. I really love it, igniting our shared potential. Now, we've touched today on a number of values that are informing the Rideau Hall Foundation's work, and I'd like to turn now, I have the privilege to turn now to two members of our audience, Mr. Bob and Francine Barrett, who are joining us today. The Barrett Family Foundation has been a significant supporter of the RHF through the establishment of the Barrett Canada Fund, which is investing in key themes related to learning equity, the Indigenous teacher education, youth civic engagement, innovation, and so much more. It's really my pleasure to welcome Bob and Francine here today and say hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so pleased.
We're pleased to be here also, and I'm really questioning why you need to ask why we would ever consider being a contributor to the Rideau Hall Foundation. But we'll get through that.
If you would indulge me, I would be, very much obliged if you could just speak a little bit to, what motivated you and your family and the wonderful Barrett Family Foundation to align with the Rideau Hall Foundation.
So let's talk a little bit about my DNA and roots. And essentially grew up outside of Boston, one of three boys, parents very active in the community with charity and philanthropy and that sort of stuff. Graduated from University of Massachusetts. And as time went on, we were wondering where to go with our lives. And my dad had been reasonably successful as an entrepreneur. And when he was contemplating what he did with the accumulated wealth, he contacted the three boys, myself and my two brothers, and we had a discussion, and we all agreed that need not consider us in his will. Okay. He basically gave all of his funding to the local church. He gave it to the University of Massachusetts, and he gave it to the Mass General Hospital, which is affiliated with Harvard. Okay, and the link here is that David went there and taught Americans how to skate. Okay, and maybe they taught him how to learn, but I think he must have done a lot of learning before he got there, and he did a lot of learning thereafter. And we all have a high regard for his level of intelligence and the commitment that he has to making Canada a better place. So we started thinking about why. You can see our roots were such that giving back was important. And up until 2013, Francine and I used to donate, not insignificant funding on a shotgun basis, no real strategy, what have you. We then established the Barrett Family Foundation along with our daughters, Kim and Rebecca. Others joined us. Mark Cullen, I think, is a name you may know. John McKenna, son-in-law, joined us. Then there was Don Prostaski, who was our first executive director. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us today. In other words, he's passed away. And our existing executive director, Alistair Matheson. So we had a strategy meeting and said, what are we going to do? And where are we going to do it, and who are we going to do it with? And we developed very significant guidelines around the foundation, and that is that we were not going to be into fundraising. We were not going to be managing a major project, but we were looking for valued partners who had aligned visions with Polytainers and the Barrett Family Foundation. And we went to work in identifying what kinds of things would be important with regard to establishing a relationship. And we were always talking about multi-million-dollar projects. So the first thing would be, is the recipient capable of dealing with this? Do they have the infrastructure? Do they have the skill sets and capabilities? And it is not, we don't want it to be a significant portion of their funding. We would like to work with people who could leverage our and match our contributions. I think we've seen that. We've seen that with Rideau Hall and other places that we've invested in. And we're looking for long-term relationships. I mean, we may start off with 3 years, but we've got one now that is a 10-year program, okay? And it will go on beyond that. So this is a long-term journey that we've established. And the journey is all around how do we, and what can we do to make our world, and let's say the Canadian world, better for all Canadians, and particularly for those who are such as Blacks and Indigenous, and who are having difficulties and who need as much help as we can possibly give them. So we went together doing this, and one of the first things that happened is I read a book called Other Ways to Win by a guy named Ken Gray. Ken was a professor at Pennsylvania University. I happened to meet him personally. And the idea is that not everyone has to get a 4-year degree. And with that, we said, this is interesting. And Polytainers, by the way, is you talk about diversity. We have people from every country in the world. We have long-term relationships. I can tell you on Monday, the 6th, one of our employees who's been there 50 years on Monday will be celebrating that. And she's an active employee. She's not just there, she's really contributing. And that's the kind of people and the kind of spirit that we have at Polytainers, and it reflects the value and the DNA of the organization anyway. So we're excited about that one. We then took our idea and we went to the various colleges, including Humber, and we told them that we would like to help them and help others understand that getting a degree in mechatronics or electrical engineering or whatever it may be, a technical degree, so this is really a STEM related objective, was very valuable for the individuals. They would be able to make a contribution to the community, to the families, and to the wealth of their ancestors. So it worked well. Humber came back with a inspirational offer, and obviously we developed a partnership with them that led to the Barrett Center of Technology Innovation. We give out 200 scholarships per year to students in the program. So we're very much supporting the employment of people and the development of skills and training to make their lives better. We went on from there to World Vision. And World Vision is involved, as it says, around the world. We had been dealing with a small charity that Mark Cullen introduced, made up of ex-farmers in west of the city who'd sold their farms and had a lot of money and didn't know what to do with it. They started SHARE. And the SHARE is involved in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. And SHARE helps Indigenous farmers in those rural areas. And we thought, well, maybe World Vision would like to team up with them. And we didn't realize at that point that World Vision has a major presence in that part of the world. And the program that was developed to give young boys, that was the thought at the time, an opportunity to stay in Honduras, let's say, and have an active and meaningful career because of technology, or their other alternative is to join a gang. So it's either gangs or migrate to the US. That's kind of what it was. The first group of graduates, 58% were women. A lot of young women are single parents, no skills, and we've trained them. So that's been a whirlwind success. We've now migrated to Colombia, Peru, and some other regions in that area. So pretty excited about that one. Again, it's everything is education. All the students have to learn English. All the students have to learn computer science. So that's pretty critical. So we went on from there and had the opportunity. Mark Cullen and I belong to a group called CAFE, Canadian Association of Family Enterprises, and we have we're in a subsection, and we were meeting like every 6 weeks, and the next meeting was going to be in Ottawa. We're going to be at the Hunt Club. So some of the guys play golf on one day, and the next, and we have a group dinner that night, and the next day is the meeting. So Mark said to me, do you really want to play golf? And I said, well, what's the alternative? And he suggested, have you been to Rideau Hall? And I said, never been there. That would be exciting. Let's do that. He did that, and he arranged a luncheon with David and Teresa. So that was the first introduction to the team, and it led to an invite back to Polytainers. When they came to Polytainers, it was with the full board of Barrett Family Enterprises. And I really discovered at that point that David is really a good fundraiser, okay? And he puts a lot of pressure on you. So if you've never been there, you'll appreciate what happens. So I'm being an entrepreneur. I don't make decisions as you would in a public company. I make decisions from the gut, okay? And if the gut feels right and it aligns with my thinking and our thinking, then we make the decision. So I stood up at one point, shook David's hand and said, we're on board. and that cost me $10 million. So we're very happy with the way that happened, and we're more than happy with the programs that have ensued ever since, and the development of programs that are very consistent with the values and the visions that we have at the Barrett Family Foundation. So that kind of gives you a synopsis as to how we got there and why we got there. And I'll tell you, I'm very pleased that we made the decision, and I'm very hopeful that others will come forward and give the Rito Hall Foundation some of the same support that we've been able to do ourselves. Thank you very much for having us today, and good luck with the rest of the meeting.
Thank you so much, Bob and Francine. And I'll tell you, that meeting that you had with David and Teresa is now Rito Hall Foundation lore, where you made that really, really extremely generous contribution. David, I would love to bring you in to say hello to your friends, Bob and Francine.
Well, I remember that handshake very well, Bob. It's still reverberating in my head. I think it was a handshake of trust. And you're right, about your early reference to skating and hockey playing. I learned in Sault Ste. Marie skating to keep my head up. And you're right that Harvard taught me to keep my head on and fill it with something useful. Wonderful story, Bob and Francine, and a great story of successful enterprise and then paying forward as you have in such a magnificent way. And we have roads to go yet ahead.
We appreciate it. We have trust in your ability to deliver.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to you both. And thank you for everyone who has joined us today. This has been another really, really excellent opportunity to chat with all of the people who are now a part of the Rito Hall family fold. And we're so happy to be here. Teresa and David, I'll ask you to come back just to give some words of thank you. But I thank you for letting me be here with you today. It's been such a pleasure. And please send us off.
Thanks, Jill. Just really all to say a great big thank you. It's so heartening to have so many folks, watching along with us today who are part of this kind of growing ecosystem with the Rito Hall Foundation. So we're grateful to our supporters, to our partners, to our volunteers, to our board members who are all on the call. So thanks again, and thank you for all you do in your own communities and for the country as well. It's really an inspiration to have the chance to work with you, and we have a lot more work to do. So David, to you.
Well, first of all, to second Teresa's motion of thanks, just wonderful to have all you gathered here today. And we appreciate so much the support and how you've brought this foundation along. And the second thing is, I'm intimately aware of the great plans that Teresa and the team have for the next months and years ahead. And you'll be hearing more about those over the next few months. I must tell you, I'm wonderfully exciting, and we've got great things to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, and thanks to you all.